2021 Community-Based Organization Working Group meeting. Before we begin the meeting, I'd like to ask Evelia Castellanos, who's serving as our clerk today, to confirm if we have a quorum.
We do have a quorum.
Wonderful.
Chair Moreno.
Thank you. I'd like to review the process for both the working group members as well as members of the public who wish to speak under public comment. For working group members, when you'd like to speak, please just click on the raised hand icon in the Zoom control panel. You have control of your video and mute, so please turn on your camera when you'd like to speak and I'll call on you. Do we have any questions before we continue? No? Okay. So Evelia, can you please provide a quick reminder on how the public comment will work? I think you're on mute.
Yes, I would like to review the process for both the working group members as well as members of the public who wish to speak under public comment. For the working group members, when you would like to speak, please click on the raised hand icon in the Zoom control panel. You have control of your video and mute, so please turn on your camera when you would like to speak, and I will call on you. Do we have any questions before we continue?
No.
I don't see any, Chair Moreno.
Wonderful. Okay, well, now we're going to move on to item number 1. Thank you for that, which is welcome and introductions. I'd like to take this opportunity for our community-based organization members to introduce themselves and the area of the region that you serve so that the public joining us today are aware. So if the working group members, if you'd like to start, feel free to, unless you guys want me to call on you, feel free to join in.
Okay, I'm Carol Lewis. I'm with the El Cajon Collaborative. Happy to be here and nice to see everyone.
And Madam Chair, this is Craig Jones. I'm with the Alliance for Regional Solutions. We're a broad spectrum collaborative of 70 plus nonprofit entities and cities in the county and North County area, roughly representing territory north of Highway 56.
Yes, good afternoon. This is Rose Ceballos with Bayside Community Center in Linda Vista.
Madam Chair, this is Brenda Lee Rodriguez from the Chula Vista Community Collaborative.
Hello, this is Beth Seligman with Samahan Health Centers. We represent the National City and South Bay region.
Hi everyone, Lilian Serrano with the National Latino Research Center at Cal State San Marcos, representing North County.
Hi everyone, this is Claire Grebner with Olivewood Gardens and Learning Center representing National City.
Hello everyone, my name is Goyo Ortiz, representing Casa Familiar in the South Bay in San Isidro.
Anybody else out there that?
Everybody, Erica Leary with the Vista Community Clinic representing communities in Oceanside and Vista.
And I'm Barry Pollard with the Urban Collaborative Project, and we represent Southeast San Diego.
Hey everyone, I'm Randy Torres Van Vleck, Director of Policy and Planning at the City Heights Community Development Corporation in Mid-City, San Diego.
Hi everyone, Carolina with the Environmental Health Coalition, and we work with communities in City Heights, Barrio Logan, and National City.
Madam Chair, this is Elizabeth Liu with Nile Sisters Development Initiative. We are serving here in San Diego and City Heights, and we are also in El Cajon City. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, anybody else? Stephanie, did you introduce yourself?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Stephanie. I'm with City Heights CDC.
Thank you. I think that is it. Jane, would you like to introduce yourself? Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, there we go. Sorry. I'm Jane Clough. I'm the Social Equity Working Group's coordinator.
You know what? I'm going to do something a little bit different. Let's have staff introduce themselves. Just say hi, just so we know who you are.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this is Tueri Faola. I am the Sustainable Communities Planning and Implementation section manager. And so Jane, who works on all of our social equity as well as our tribal work, is in our section. So happy to be here with you guys today. We also oversee the work on the regional plan.
Hello, I'm Evelia Castellanos, and I'm the clerk of the working group today.
Thank you. Katie?
Hi, I'm Katie Hentrick. I am a climate resilience planner in the Sustainable Communities Planning and Implementation section, and I'll be presenting on item 7 today.
Thank you. Did we miss anybody? Oh, there we go. Brian?
Hi, I'm Brian Lane, Senior Transit Planner in the Short Range Transit Planning Group. I've been working on the regional vision and the transit leap part, and also am the Fares Guru for the region. So we'll be presenting on the Fares item today.
Thank you. Did we miss anybody? If you'd like to just hop on.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if Mohammed Twama is on. Are you there, Mohammed?
I could see him, but I think he's self-muted.
There you go.
Hello.
Yay.
Hi.
Hi, how are you? This is Mohammed Tuama, the newcomer for the development in East County. Sorry, I was about to talk, but it didn't work. Thank you.
No problem.
Good to see you, Mohammed.
Good to see you, Jane.
Rosina, did you introduce yourself? Yeah.
Not yet.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. I have to, I'm homeschooling 3 kids in here, so I'm a little late, but thank you so much for having me. This is Rosina Lizarraga from Olive Gardens National City in South Bay. Thank you.
Thank you. All righty. Did we miss anybody? Oh, here we go. Go ahead, Colleen.
Good afternoon, everyone. Colleen Clemenson, Sandag Planning Director. Great to see you all.
Thank you, guys. I think that is everybody, but if not, go ahead and let me know. If not, we're going to move on.
Tracy,
Thank you.
You want to introduce yourself?
Tracy?
Oh, sorry. Tracy Furshaw, and I assist with Jane on the CBO group. And today I'm playing a little bit of a production role.
Wonderful. Thank you to staff for introducing yourselves. We really appreciate it. Oh, I see Nicole and Darby.
Hello, I'm Nicole Wisman-Weber. I'm a professor at the University of San Diego. I'm working on the holistic implementation of adaptation and transportation resilience strategies. I'm presenting today on our equity guidance document. So it's wonderful to be here and wonderful to see all your introductions.
And hi, my name is Darby Berry. I'm the program manager for the San Diego Regional Climate Collaborative hosted at the University of San Diego, and we'll be sharing with Nicole this afternoon. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. All right, I think we got everybody. And we're going to move on to the next item, which is item number 2, approval of the meeting minutes. We're going to approve the January 7th, 2021. May I have a motion to approve the January 7th, 2021 minutes?
Motion by Barry to approve the minutes.
Motion by Mr. Pollard. Can I get a second?
Second by Carol Lewis.
Second by Ms. Lewis. Okay, and so I'll call on the clerk for the roll call vote. Clerk?
Chair, Council Member Vivian Moreno.
Oh, I don't vote. I'm sorry.
My apology.
No, it's okay.
Alliance for Regional Solutions, Craig Jones.
Yes, I approve.
Bayside Community Clinic, Rosa Ceballos.
Yes, I approve.
Casa Familiar, Goyo Ortiz.
Yes, I approve.
City Heights Collaborative, Stephanie Hernandez.
I approve.
Chula Vista Community Collaborative, Brendalay Rodriguez.
Yes, I approve.
El Cajon Collaborative,
Yes, this is Carol Lewis. I approve.
National Latino Research Center, Lillian Serrano.
Yes, aye.
Nile Sisters Development Initiative, Elizabeth Liu.
Yes, I approve.
Orville Wood Gardens, Claire Groberner.
Approve.
Savannah Health Centers, Faye Silgaman.
I approve.
Urban Collaborative Project, Brian Berry Pollard.
He
Ms.
made the
Pollard,
motion.
we can't hear you.
Urban Collaborative
Yes,
Project,
I approve. Yes, I approve. My apologies.
Vista Community Clinic.
Yes,
Erica.
this is Erica. I approve.
And the motion passes with those present.
Wonderful, thank you. Now, if CBO members would like to offer any comments or questions, once again, please either turn on your camera or raise your hands at this time. Comments from our public? I don't see any from the working group or the public. Clerk, if you just don't mind verifying that.
I don't have any hands risen, Chair Moreno.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the next item, which is item number 3, public comment, communication, and member comment. Members of the public shall have the opportunity to address the working group on any issues within the jurisdiction of SANDAG that is not on the agenda. Do we have any public comment? I don't see any. And CBO members, if you have any comments or announcements of interest to the working group, once again, either turn on your camera or raise your hand. I see Mr. Craig Jones. Go ahead. You have the floor.
I can't help myself. I just want to note real quickly, starting this new year, we've got new political leadership in many jurisdictions, including the County of San Diego. And I want to observe that this bodes well, I think, for moving forward with a more progressive agenda, including supporting transportation resources for those who have not had it. So this is my hope, and I just want to provide that recognition.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I don't see any hands raised by the public. So we are going to move on to the next item. Thank you. So the next item is item number 4, which is the chair's report. So some good news for our North County members. SANDAG leaders virtually cut the ribbon on a 3-mile segment of the Inland Rail Trail in North County, San Diego this week. It's part of a planned 21-mile bike and pedestrian route between Escondido and Oceanside. The section of the Inland Rail Trail is a dedicated multi-use path that runs along the Sprinter rail line in the Northern County Transit District right-of-way. Now, with this section of the Inland Rail Trail complete, people can now bike, walk, and roll along more than 10 continuous miles of pathway between the Escondido Transit Center and Mar Vista Drive in Vista. So very neat stuff happening there. I can't wait to go and check it out. If CBO members would like to make any comments or have questions, once again, please either turn on your camera or raise your hands at this time. I don't see anybody. And this is about the chair's report, obviously. I don't see the public. I don't see the public with their hands up. So we are going to move on to the next item. The next item is item number 5, a resolution of working group recommendation draft SANDAG committee to the equity statement to the board of directors. As you all know, you provided input and recommendations on the equity statement that we reviewed last month. Your input was incorporated into a revised version, which was sent to the SANDAG board on January 22nd. After a lengthy discussion, Chair Blakespear recommended that an ad hoc subcommittee be formed to continue to review the equity statement and bring back a revised version to the February 12th board meeting. I'm going to be honest with you guys. First and foremost, thank you to the members that attended. It was quite a robust conversation, but I thank you guys for being there and making your comments heard. I felt that this was not respectful to the social equity working group and the input you provided for staff. The equity statement that went to the board on January 22nd reflected, I thought, thoughtful consideration from the very population impacted by systematic marginalization. I did not participate in the ad hoc subcommittee, but I understand that they actually came around to seeing that the statement was a meaningful representation of the sentiment and commitment that SANDAG intended. They had one modification, which I think you're all going to agree serves to really strengthen the statement, and that's the word fund. That said, I have included in this item a resolution which I'd like to suggest could accompany the ad hoc committee's revised statement, indicating your approval, as there are many board members who were not involved in the ad hoc committee and may not understand the importance of this effort. Now, by attaching a resolution to the statement, you're clarifying your support and the value of your input. Now, my role as chair of the Social Equity Working Group is to amplify your voices, the voices of your organization, and ultimately the communities you serve. I think this resolution actually does this. So with that, does anyone have any comments? And let's discuss. I'll open the floor. I see a hand raised, and Mr. Jones?
Yes, it was, I did monitor the ad hoc committee discussion. It was very thorough, very well-intentioned, I thought, from all parties. And it was a unanimous vote by that ad hoc committee to support this modification. Just to help move things along, I would move, subject to further discussion, to approve the resolution that's presented to us with the working draft 2 is amended as an attachment.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and thank you for attending. I see Ms. Serrano.
Yes, I was able to see the discussion, the recording of the discussion of the subcommittee that was formed, and follow along during the meeting with the board of directors. And I support this resolution, but I was wondering if if there's a way to add to it to clarify the multiple groups that are represented in the social equity group, just because I feel that there was more discussion in the ad hoc of who composes the social equity working group, right? All the communities that are represented in this working group, and all the voices that are being elevated in our discussions that I didn't see at the board of directors meeting. So I feel that this resolution might be a good way of emphasizing that. I see that on it, we do acknowledge that there are 13 representatives from community-based organizations, but maybe add a little more to it, geographically where we're located and or the different groups that we work with or specialize working with. That will be my recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Miss Erica?
Hi, I also just watched the recording of the ad hoc committee, so I would support Craig's motion that we adopt the resolution and support the draft language being proposed.
Wonderful, thank you. Would anybody else like to make any comments? I see Miss Rosina.
Thank you. I would like to see, I was able to see the whole video for the input they have from the chairs and the members for the Sandak board and the subcommittee that they did for this revising this statement. But it's not quite clear for me that the word funding was applied to this economical affordability of the equity part. So I would like to see more extensive or in a simple word, because funding is a very generalized term in regards fair, equitable funding for local communities like ours. So for me, fund, when I see the word fund, is like millions of dollars or purpose of the funding part from Sandak with those funding, with those monies. So I would like to see more explanation about what funding is. And I just don't quite understand the word funding there, but it would be something that we can be figuring it out a way that people who read this statement feel identified with efforts of being affordable in regards to transportation. Because the concern is like very common about fare cost in transportation. So it's just my point of view. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll try to clarify, as you guys are aware in Sandag, this is where most of the planning for our transportation regionally happens. So it's this statement talks about it used to only be plan and prioritize, and I think the funding is really the meat of the conversation, right? If we only plan to plan and prioritize, but we don't put any money behind it, that's obviously a problem for our community. So I think the funding part of it is very important, and it really gives a commitment that not only are we going to plan for multimodal uses of transportation in our communities, not only are we going to prioritize our communities, but the funding aspect is going to be there. So just to give you a little bit of background on that, we're going to go with Ms. Carol Lewis, followed by Caro, and then Mr. Barry Pollard.
Thank you. Yeah, I attended the board meeting and then I attended the committee meeting as well. And at the board meeting, I heard that they wanted to list all of the vulnerable populations. And I was really afraid that we were just watering it down. And so I was really happy to see that they stayed with the historically underserved, because I think that's the statement we really wanted to make, was that yes, there has been incidents in the past, projects in the past that may not have served these populations well. And we recognize that, and we want to move forward in a more equitable way in the future. So I really appreciated that. And I understand Mr. Shu's addition for fund. So I also want to say that I approve of the new statement.
Thank you. Go ahead, Caro.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually wanted to mention something very similar to what Carol mentioned. I attended the board meeting. I did not attend the committee meeting. So I'm glad to hear some more clarity through the committee meeting, because during the board meeting, it did feel like it was going to get very diluted. And I think that historically, when we start talking about focusing resources in communities that have been experiencing the consequences of racism, then it gets really complicated. That's where it gets complicated, and there is intentions to dilute that effort. So it sounds to me like this composition is pointing, it's still pointing at that ultimately what we need to be clear on here is that our communities need a lot of money to undo the history of racism. And it's going to take a lot of capacity and focus because we can't spread the existing resources too thin, otherwise it will continue the historical issues. And so I ultimately, that's what we want to make sure here, that we're focused and that it's not everyone that needs the money. And that is true. And so I'm glad to hear that it was clarified through the committee because it wasn't very helpful during the board meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you, Caro. I'm sorry, my brain is drawing a blank. Carol, did you go? Oh, you did. I'm sorry. Mr. Pollard, I apologize. You have the floor.
Okay, anything else I would say would be redundant, but I can tell you that overall, there's this air of lack of trust, and I think that'll rectify itself as we move through this process. And it's not a lack of trust within us. I'm speaking collectively and perhaps for other communities as well. As a community, we've been down these paths before. And your point was well taken by adding the word fund. Mm-hmm. That was brilliant because nobody else would have caught that unless we are sensitive to this process, right? That we could talk all we want, but as you said, if there's no money, there's no juice. Mm-hmm. So no, I would be interested. I'm sure we'll talk about the equity action plan as we move forward. That's, I guess, where we start putting meat on this bone, I guess.
Wonderful. And Mr. Pollard, you're never redundant. This is a separate meeting, right? So always feel free to share because you have a lot of insight, as everybody else does. We want to hear from you, so we appreciate it very much.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Ms. Faye?
Well, I'd really like to commend you all for the good work. This is, I think, a very well-crafted statement. I just don't know where I can add the word support in this statement that we plan, prioritize, fund, support, and build projects and programs. I think we also need to make an extra effort to get buy-in, not only from the community, but from other supporters as well.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good point. Would you like to add anything else, Ms. Faye? Did that conclude your comments?
No, I think that's what I'd like just to share, that if we can put in something like support, like we can have buy-in from the community as well as from other sectors. I just don't know. I can't think of the right word to use right now, but if you can just add that sort of verbiage, I just think that it will.
Okay, you dropped towards the end, but it right now, Ms. Faye, with this statement, it's really SANDAG as a board going out to the community with this statement to say, hey, we acknowledge what we've done, we're addressing it, and we're going to change it for the future. So it really is about us as a board going out to the community. I have to tell you, I have to share it with you guys. I had people texting me like, oh my God, SANDAG is doing this? We haven't even, done it in these, X, Y, and Z, let's just put it that way. So, and obviously you guys know this is a work in progress. This is not set in stone. This is not, we are, mind you that we're going to make sure we follow through on this, when conversations start getting a little bit more difficult, when it really is about equity, right? When we are really talking real equity for our region, but we could always, modify and change as we go throughout the years. But for now, this is the statement that SANDAG is making to the committee. to the community. So just to give you guys some perspective. Let me see. I thought I saw Miss Lou's hand up. Did I see Miss Lou's hand up? Did you want to speak?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much for the great work you are doing with all of us. I wanted to share and let you know that Nile Sisters representative, our senior program manager, Brian Lash, attended both the meetings for the board. So I am very pleased for the comments and the decisions that were taken in the meeting. And I would like to also thank you so much for talking about the funding that should go into this work. Because like all of us, we know that it takes funding to get things done. We are not going to accomplish what we need to and what our community needs to without money putting behind the work. So I truly appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Now, I did see Craig with his video on. Did you want to add anything else?
Actually, no, I think the discussion has covered things that I might speak to. I just wanted to note that during the subcommittee discussion, Hassan Ikrada very clearly made the point that this is a starting point, that much more detail will remain to be implemented, that the proof will be in the pudding. In fact, on some of the agenda items we have later on our agenda today, we'll begin to speak to this as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you for adding that. Any other committee members, if you wish to speak, if you could turn your video on before I go to the public. Oh, Ms. Serrano, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to point out that there was on the chat a comment around maybe creating an attachment to go along with the resolution. I don't know if we will have to vote on that as well, or if that will be something that staff can do.
Right now, the motion on the floor is to move our support for Sandag's commitment to equity, and we do have a second. So that is the motion on the floor right now.
And sorry, Madam Chair, I think the idea is to have an attachment to the statement that has a listing of all of the community-based organizations that are part of the working group with a little description. We have a sort of a profile list so that it would inform the resolution.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jane. All right, I'm going to take it out to the public now, and we have Miss Jacqueline Reynoso.
Good afternoon, council member. Good to see this very dynamic and much needed statement on behalf of Sandag. I applaud Elaine Richardson. I know she's been doing a lot of work with respect to promoting small and mid-sized businesses so that they also have a standing chance and the support mechanisms in place to access procurement opportunities. And so I'm just curious if that will make its way into this equity statement, because I view this more as a general statement that is, we'll go out to the community, but it doesn't seem very salient with respect to like procurement or recruitment of small business enterprises. The way the statement is laid out. So I'm reading the line, recruit and develop employees. And, it could be maybe added as a consideration in your recruitment and development of DBEs and SBs. And then the last line here, it says set expectations for companies and stakeholders that work with you. So that could address it, but my assumption is those are already existing firms that are already working with Sandag. So, wearing my small business hat for many, many years, that's a perspective that I'd like to see there.
Thank you. Thank you for that input. Very well taken. Yes, this equity statement for now is more general, if you will. And as was noted, you know, it's moving in the direction, it's action. How did Hassan say, Jane? It's action moving forward, right? This, we would be the first in the state of California in many fronts, I will say, and I will say as a council member, we, the city of San Diego, don't even have an equity statement. So Sandag is really well, is just light years away from where our a lot of our agencies are. So yes, we are keeping it more general, if you will. But that is a good point, and we'll note that, and you know, moving forward, if we need to modify, we absolutely will. But I do have a second, and I do have a motion and a second. I don't see any hands up from committee members or from attendees. I don't know if you would like to add anything, Jane. I don't mean to put you on the spot, or Colleen.
I just wanted to say in that phrase that you said, Jacqueline, about setting expectations for companies and stakeholders that work with us. Although I agree with you, it needs a little bit refinement, but that was the intent. So I think the sub phrases in that sentence starting in 2021 in and forward, each of those sub phrases sort of represents a piece of the broader agency and the areas that we work in. And you know, there's always many ways to refine, but yes, that's absolutely, that was the intent.
Thank you for that, Jane.
Okay, so we have a motion by Ms. Jones, and oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I didn't write the second. Clerk, who was the seconder?
Erica Leary.
Erica Leary, thank you. And
Craig
so,
Jones.
I'm sorry?
Craig Jones was the first, and Erica for the second, yeah.
Wonderful. So I'm going to call on the clerk for a roll call vote. Go ahead, clerk.
Alliance for Regional Solutions, Craig Jones.
Yes.
Bayside Community Clinic, Rose Ceballos.
Yes.
Casa Familiar, Goyo Ortiz.
Yes.
City Heights, Stephanie Hernandez.
Hey, actually, this is Randy Torres Van Vleck. I'm representing City Heights CDC in today's meeting, but I'll vote yes.
Thank you. Chula Vista Community Collaborative, Brandalay Rodriguez.
Yes.
El Cajon Collaborative, Carol Lewis.
Yes, Carol Lewis, yes.
National Latino Research Center, Lillian Serrano.
Yes.
Nile Sisters Development Initiative, Elizabeth Liu.
Yes.
Oliver Gardens, Claire Grosvenor.
Yes.
Samanahan Health Centers, Faye Silgman.
Yes.
Urban Collaborative Project, Brian Barry Pollard.
Yes.
Vista Community Clinic, Erica Leary.
Yes.
And the motion passes with those present.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody. We're going to move on to the next item. Item number 6 is on the social equity analysis for the 2021 regional plan. We have our very own Miss Jane Clough presenting this item, so feel free to take it away.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman Moreno. This is very exciting. We've been talking about this for a while, and we have finally had some results of the network, and I'll be presenting the information from what we've learned from the performance measures. So slide 2, please. Can you move forward the slide? Thank you. Next. So the 2021 regional plan is being developed through a data-driven and informed process, along with input from a diverse community, including this working group, all resulting in a transformational network to create a transportation system that is fast, fair, and clean for all San Diegans. The focus of today's presentation is about the fair piece. We're going to talk about meeting Title VI requirements, but more importantly, sharing some highlights of how this transformational network has performed. The transportation infrastructure, as you know, has a significant effect on the quality of life of the region's residents by shaping access to opportunities, including jobs, education, housing, services, and recreational opportunities. To achieve social equity and sustainability in the transportation network, it requires making investments that provide everyone, regardless of age, race, color, national origin, income, or agility, with opportunities to work, shop, study, be healthy, and play. Next slide. So consistent with the practice of past practice in state, federal laws, SANDAG will be conducting a social equity analysis on the 2021 regional plan to assess the distribution of benefits and burdens of the transportation network on social equity focused populations. So today we're sharing some of the initial draft findings related to the performance measures used to determine the comparative distribution of benefits and burdens for the network for select social equity focused populations. So the framework for the, go back, yeah, stay there, thanks. The framework for the social equity analysis for the 2021 regional plan includes the following steps. First, defining the social equity focused populations based on socioeconomic and demographic characteristics that can be forecasted into the future. Second, identifying key questions and social equity performance measures that reflect issues faced by social equity focused populations and communities in the region that can provide meaningful comparative data. Then conducting a social equity analysis on the plan network in relation to the no-build scenario, using the selected social equity performance measures for each of the social equity focused populations. The two aspects of this are to examine the improvements for each population group and the comparative improvement relative to the non-population. And then finally, something that we discussed at our December meeting and we'll discuss again in March, identifying disadvantaged communities geographically in accordance with AB 805 and developing strategies for reducing pollution exposure for these affected communities. And we'll be talking about that at our March meeting. So go ahead. So just to take a look at the three populations. So this working group, it was more than a year ago, and we were developing or deciding the populations that we wanted to focus on in terms of looking at the impact of the network. We decided on three populations: minority, people of color, low income, and seniors. So for in the San Diego region, in terms of race and ethnicity, we're a majority minority population. And by 2050, people of color will be more than 56% of the population. Next. Next. In terms of income distribution, we needed to create a threshold for income, and low income was determined to be 200% of poverty. And this is because of the high cost of living in San Diego. So if we just did poverty level, we would not capture a number of groups within that. So we did 200% of poverty. So 45% of households in San Diego earn under $60,000 a year. And the distribution shows a significant number of population that are earning less than 30%. Are earning less than $30,000. Okay, next slide. And then in terms of seniors, the threshold for seniors we selected was 75 and over. And this has all to do with, as some of you have were in these conversations way back when, of looking at where seniors are most connected to become transit dependent and are most connected to the system. And so 75 became the number in terms of thinking about reduced mobility and transit dependence. And as you see here, through from 2016 to 2050, 59% of the population growth in the region will be in the ages of 75 and over. Next slide. So this is the geographic distribution of the 3 social equity focused populations. And again, the importance here is that these are populations and these are characteristics that we can forecast when we're looking at modeling the transportation system. We will, for the social equity chapter, for the analysis chapter, we'll also be looking at other populations in terms of existing conditions, but these are the 3 populations that we were able to model and the impact of the system on these 3 populations. Go ahead. So in terms of how we evaluate the system, we have to come up with some kind of measure, if you think about, if you will, a yardstick. So performance measures are essentially a yardstick to look at based on the goals that we have for the network, what kind of performance measures can we have that we can actually model in a quantitative way and really see the impact on those populations. And you all were very involved in looking at the performance measures a while back, and thinking through what would be the most meaningful measures. And these are the measures that we were able to model. So first is about access. Access is critical. Access to jobs, access to higher education, access to basic needs. So we have, in terms of the economy, transit access to opportunities, and this is in terms of the employment centers. So you remember that we have created tiers of employment centers around the region, and have looked at all that data, and we have 4 tiers. And we've measured the access via transit to those tiers. And then in terms of higher education, colleges and community colleges, again, access to education. And these are the 2 sort of most important measures of opportunity. And then in terms of 2 other performance measures are the cost benefit ratio, or the benefit cost analysis of the transportation, the relative transportation investments. Those in terms of quantifying how the network performs and where the relative investments are. And then out-of-pocket transportation costs. So in terms of households, how much of their income has to be dedicated to transportation costs, which is critical. And then access to basic needs. So we did retail, parks, and healthcare or medical. And then in terms of environment, the average particulate matter, and we had conversations a number of months ago on whether to use particulate matter 10 point or 2.5. And so as time has gone on, it's been clear that we need to do PM 2.5, which is the most, which is the smaller particulates that through pollution, get into your lungs and affect the health of the population. And then access to bicycle facilities, quarter mile to bike facilities, and then half a mile to quality transit. And again, we have several tiers of transit, and this measure measures access to transit. So these are the performance measures. As I said, this is a mechanism of looking at this as if it was a yardstick, and measuring the impact of the network on these three populations in comparison to the rest of the population. So moving forward. Okay, so when we talk about it as social equity analysis, there's two pieces to it. One is in terms of these particular yardsticks of these measures, how is the network improving access to these different measures for that given population? But it's also about looking at it in comparison to the non-population, right? So we want to make sure that the distribution is fair. And so I'm just going to give you an example of what we do for each, what we have done for each of the performance measures. So this would take is the percentage of population within half a mile of any of the three tiers of transit. And so as you can see, the low income population in the base year of 2016 had 11.8% access. If we do nothing, the no build scenario, this would be completing things that are already in the works. And so there would be very little improvement. With the plan network, these results, and I know that some of you have been involved, you've been involved in this process and seen previous iterations of the regional plan, but to have literally double the access is phenomenal. So, and then if you look at the comparison with the non-low income population, they have slightly less access in 2016 and improved significantly, but not as significantly as the low income population. So you take this base kind of information and go to the next slide. Next slide. And so we go from there. So what we're trying to do here is to look at the direction of the improvements and then the difference between the improvement of each of those two populations. So what this is showing is that the low-income population's improvement between the build scenario and the no build scenario is significant, and it goes in the right direction, improving. But in addition to that, it's improving. The difference between the two levels of improvement is significant. If there had been disparity, the low income, the blue line would have been going downwards, and there would have been under the purple line, and there would have been a negative difference, right? And that's what it would have been a disparity. So this basically says, in comparison, the low-income population is improving in their access, and in fact, they're improving more than the non-low-income population. So we've done this scenario, this calculation for each of the performance measures, basically looking to make sure that we have similar improvements and that they're not going in the wrong direction, right? That there's not a disparity between those improvements. And all of the performance measures were there. We did not find any disparity for any. So good news. Going on to the next slide. So this just gives you a summary of all of the performance measures. We are waiting on the benefit cost ratio. We don't have that information yet, but all of the other performance measures met that threshold that we need to meet for Title VI. Going ahead. But now to focus on the exciting results, overall results of these measures, and looking at what the actual improvements are for these three populations. So in terms of regional transit access to retail, so we're going to do the three basic needs. Access to retail, the low-income population. You know, Tracy, you're gonna have to slide these because they're dynamic. Go ahead. So this is 15-minute access via transit to retail for low-income population, the minority, and seniors. And these numbers are astronomical. The improvements, just to let you know, in the previous regional plan, if we saw, you can stay back there, thank you. In the previous regional plan, if we had a 2% increase, it was incredible. So these numbers are amazing. So 44%, 47% low-income population has transit access, regional transit access to retail, 41% for minority, and seniors 38%. Then going to the next. The next is regional transit access to medical facilities. Low income with the plan is 86%, minorities 82%, and seniors is 78%. And then next. And then we look at the employment centers, and we looked at tier 1 and tier 2. This is tier 1 employment. So this is transit access to tier 1 employment centers. And you can see the map on the right. Go ahead. And so this is 30-minute transit access to tier 1. And the improvements are, again, phenomenal. For low income, get back up, please. Thank you. So for low income population, it's an increase of 17% from 16% in 2016 to 33% in 2050. And for minorities, a 15% increase going from 13 to 28% in 2050. So this is access to the tier 1 employment centers in 30 minutes. Transit access to tier 1 employment. And then the next, then we did tier 2. Go ahead. And again, 30 minutes. And the increase was 18% from 40 to 58% in 2050. And minorities, 17% going from 34 to 51% access. Go ahead. And then higher education, we looked at 2 pieces. Go ahead. So, and keep it there for a second. Yeah, right there. No, back up. Sorry. Very dynamic slide here. So this is 30-minute access, transit access to higher education. Region-wide is over 50% for low-income and minority populations. And then if those populations are in the mobility hubs, go ahead, it increases to 60%. So this is for low-income and minority populations that are in the mobility hubs, giving them 30-minute access to higher education. Continue. Next slide. And then for increased access to high quality transit stops for people within a half a mile, it's 200%. So for low income populations, having access via commuter rail, light rail, or next gen rapid services. For low income, it went from 12% to 41%. And for minorities, it went from 10 to 36%, and for seniors, 8 to 35%. And then we looked at accessibility to the regional mobility hubs via transit. And then we just go ahead and yeah. So with 30 minutes, and this was total saturation for employment. Go ahead. For retail, this is 15 minutes access, and this was up to 68%. And for medical, it was a complete saturation. So this meaning that populations that are in the regional mobility hubs have access to these 3 amenities via transit, which is, again, astronomical. Go ahead. So we just wanted to highlight the incredible results from looking at the performance measures in the network from the modeling results, and give you a flavor of what the results are. And then we will be coming back to the working group discussing the pollution reduction strategies in March. And then this is how we're going to be revealing aspects of the plan to the board of directors over the course of the next few months in the winter and spring. So if the February 12th meeting of the board is going to be going from the vision to the plan. And some of the work that we've discussed today will be included in that presentation. And then pricing and funding the regional plan. Then in the spring, a deep discussion on equity in the regional plan. Then the role of technology in the regional plan, and then aligning state, regional, and local planning with the plan draft coming out in the spring. So with that, Chairwoman Moreno, any questions, discussion? We can go back to slides that you're interested in.
Wonderful. Yeah, if you don't mind leaving up the slides, I'm sure there will be a request to go back to a few of them. Mr. Jones?
Yes, hi, thanks for this presentation. I'll try to be as succinct as possible. I've got several questions for clarification. Overall, this seems to be dramatic improvement. My first question is, how is this level of analysis possible at this point? Given that I don't believe the plan has yet been detailed out or fleshed out, or has it been fleshed out further? Has modeling, computer modeling been done on a draft plan? That's my first question.
Yes. Yes, these are the initial results of a round of modeling that's been done on the network. And I don't know, Colleen, if you want to respond.
Yeah, so what's really, really exciting about this, and it's a great question, Craig, we have been able to take literally everything from the vision and move that into a plan. And so with one exception, we have removed the additional coaster line. Our initial modeling was showing that was an over improvement for that particular area. So every single transit project, all the policies, land use assumptions have been loaded into the transportation model. And this is what's coming out. Now we will continue to make some refinements, but this is the work, the hard work that the team has been doing all during the fall, because as you know, coding all this stuff in is really, really, really tough. The other thing we had to do with all of that, and I don't want to go into too much detail, but I think it's for the benefit of the group here. The other thing we had to do is look at the whole system of projects and plans and policies and kind of figure out what can we do when. And so there's things you can do earlier in the planning period while you're doing the big plans for the bigger projects, further along in the timeline. So anyway, what you're seeing here today and what Jane has showed you is essentially what is coming together as the plan. So thank you for that question.
Good, thank you. And so this is all very good news based on the details of a draft plan that I think we all with bated breath await for public release. And of course, when it's released to the public, there's going to be detailed assessment and I would say positive critical assessment done. But so hopefully all of this is really true. I've got a question about some of the exhibits that were shown in the presentation. Several of them referenced accessibility or measurements within the mobility hubs. And I want to note that this group, our discussion group here, has had significant discussion about the application of those mobility hubs and the relationship to communities of concern outside those mobility hub areas. So I'd welcome comment back on that, and just to emphasize again that there are significant portions of disadvantaged populations which are outside of those as presently defined mobility hub boundary areas. I don't know if you want to make a comment on that before I go on to the next.
Yeah, I don't know if Twerry, if you want to make a comment to that. I would just say that I think one of the issues is the boundaries are a lot smoother, they're fuzzier than people. Yeah, you always have to have some sort of boundary, but I don't think that it's as set in stone as some might think. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, so I guess just maybe highlighting the way that we represented the information and something that we've been allowed to do with our model because we do have mobility hubs identified. And so those areas, how they are currently identified, we're able to model and understand what are the metrics that we assess usually only at the regional scale. And I think that's the primarily what you saw in Jane's presentation are what are the metrics for our social equity focused populations for the region. But because we have been talking about the mobility hubs and the benefit that the mobility hubs bring to the region as a whole with the concentration of transportation services within them, and also looking to enhance the land use that are within those mobility hubs, we wanted to also convey what that would mean for the residents who live within the mobility hubs in terms of their access. So it's not to say that we're not still looking and we still have the metrics that we need to meet for the entire region from a social equity perspective, but we wanted to highlight what that was in the mobility hubs. So it's really just a different way for us to show you the data.
Okay, the concern is just to make sure that the measurements of equity are not limited to those disadvantaged populations only within the mobility hub areas. So we can look forward to those broader measures.
Right.
And this kind of speaks to another concern that I have. I'm sorry, go ahead.
But yeah, just to say that, so when I said regional versus Mo hubs,
Yeah.
so we have both. We have metrics for both.
Okay, okay. I'd like to see, it would be good to see those measures for the whole region without consideration of the mobility hubs.
Yeah.
And so all of this speaks to a concern which I have now. I'm with an entity that represents North County, and in the North County area, there's significant disadvantaged population in the more rural, more population dispersed, unincorporated areas that are significantly disadvantaged. So I have a concern that their accessibility might be underplayed in this analysis and perhaps in the plan, although I'm not sure. It strikes me that the flexible fleets portion of the plan really needs to be geographically expansive in the North County area, for example, to make sure that those disadvantaged, more rural populations, which really have very poor transportation access right now, have that increased. You know, using the CalEnviro screen communities exclusively tends to not highlight those populations. The broader definitions that do show along the Highway 78 corridor, disadvantaged populations are more useful, but again, would exclude the more rurally dispersed populations. So I'm putting in a chit for making sure that the plan provides transportation access for those more dispersed populations as well. Let me see. I read through the staff report, of course, before our presentation today. One of the displays in the presentation, I think, was the Title VI table.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to go to that.
It's the summary table.
Yeah. Yeah.
There you go. Yep.
There it is. This, I think, is the same table as appeared in the written staff report, which was titled "Below is a Summary Table of the Initial Draft Findings."
Yeah.
In the staff report, and I'll lift myself some notes here so I would remember, there's this table is a checklist. And it seems to, I was trying to understand what the checklist was showing. You know, the checklist are for, it represents the 3 types of disadvantaged communities of concern related to these several different measures.
The disparity calculations. The disparity calculations.
Okay. Okay.
That was my sample, the example that I gave, that was conducted. So we went through all of the performance measures to look at those comparisons of access between the population and the non-population, be it low income versus non-low income, minority versus non-low, to see if there was a disparity.
In this presentation at the bottom, it says checklist or check mark equals no disparate impact or disproportionate effect.
Right.
And here's my question. Well, I interpret that to mean that the checklist is showing that there is no unequal impact or disproportionate impact on these communities of concern. But I think we should be aiming at not equality, but equity. And so I want to understand what this is showing us. It doesn't appear to show promotion of equity as opposed to no disproportionate effect. Any discussion or comment on that?
So equity would be that whatever the numbers are, that they would be parallel, right? That there would be parity in the improvements. And so that's what we need to be able to satisfy Title VI. What we're really interested in is improvements, massive improvements, which is what we were showing in the other slides, right?
Exactly, and that's why it was interesting to see. I think it was the next
federal requirement that we need to make sure that the system is not disproportionately impacting the social equity populations.
Okay. Right? And I get that. This is for purposes of showing compliance with Title VI. Mm-hmm. But to emphasize the point, what we're trying to do is go beyond equality and go to equity. And I think that other example, if it proves to be true, shows that that's being achieved. So that's great.
If we want to slide over to, like the employment one.
Yeah, I think that was the...
Keep going. I think it was...
Yeah.
Keep going.
And one more.
There you go. Yeah, and then go ahead and put all the data there. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. That's what we're looking for, right? That was the network was designed for having substantial,
right.
push the envelopes as strong as possible.
So two more questions. One of the exhibits was a social equity focused population map.
Mm-hmm.
Can we look at that real quickly?
It's like, I think maybe slide 4.
Yeah, it was
3 or 4. Yeah. The geographic, there you go. Mm-hmm.
Social equity focused population. Okay. This again, I think, tends to show those populations of concern within urbanized areas. And I want to again emphasize that there is significant North County populations that are not necessarily borne out here. And I don't want them to be lost in the analysis or in the benefits that are brought forward. One of the other exhibits was performance measure percent of population within a half mile. Mm-hmm. Could we look at that real quickly?
The last one that said, or this, was it a table?
It was, I think it was a table, but it was talking about it actually relates to this table, but it was a further exhibit that talks about the half mile and quarter mile access measure. So I think the title of it was performance measure percent of population within a half mile.
Yeah, that one. This one?
Yeah.
It was an example. This just was an example for doing the explaining conceptually the disparity calculation.
Sure. And again, this is incredibly dramatic. Mm-hmm. So is this measure within a half mile of any? It says within a half mile of any transit tier.
Of the three transit tiers. So we have data breaking down each one of them, and then this is the one where it access to any of them.
Oh, okay. Transfer tier.
There's lots more data, Craig.
Yeah.
There's lots more data.
And again, my concern is that so this shows not transit tier locations as they are today, but rather as they will be at the build out of the plan.
Yes.
Okay, so that's better because we can expect that there'll be many more dispersed access points with the build out of the plan. Just one.
Yeah, and it also doesn't show 2035, which we haven't gotten there yet. So.
Okay, okay.
Mr.
So,
Jones, I apologize to be stepping
I know
in.
we're running out of time.
We are running out of time. We have a very important item that I want to make sure we hear, and that's item number 8. We have other speakers, but the feeling that I'm getting is that this needs to come back, right? So we could discuss this a little bit further. I just wanted to give your colleagues, you have represented North County really well. Thank you. And I want to make sure your other colleagues have an opportunity to ask questions or comments, if you don't mind.
Sure. No, and I think I appreciate the ability to get my points out. So thanks for recognizing them.
Thank you. And we will bring this back so that we could digest this information more thoroughly and ask any other questions or comments. I'm going to hand it over to Randy.
Oh, thank you, Chair Moreno. Yeah, I was just going to say what I said in the chat. I think that this is a really important discussion. It's critical to the work of our working group, and I hope that we can return it for a fuller discussion so that we can get to item 8, which is potential fare increase. That's going to economically impact our communities, and it's going back to the board in 1 week. So I'm hoping that we can have enough time for discussion, potential action on that in this meeting today. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Now, Ms. Faye.
Yes, thank you so much for this framework. I really commend you all, Jane, for doing this. My question is, how were you able to factor in social costs involved in displacing people as a result of these projects? So were there any efforts to bring in measures so that we are able to see the outcomes, social costs, when we replace a certain neighborhood with this transit? So I think that's my question.
Yeah. Displacement, you're talking about displacement?
Yes. And how were they computed as to remuneration, especially for small business enterprises who have been in that location for a longer time, and we're trying to displace them for this transit?
That's a good one. I don't know that we have done, displacement is a really, really difficult measure. And these particular performance measures are not set up that way. But thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Do we have any other comments on item number 6? Caro, go ahead.
Thank you. I wanted to, sorry, can you see my video? Okay, now you can see it. I wanted to elevate what Faye was bringing up, and that is the, so it was rent burden part of the analysis? And if it was, how so? And if not, why? Why are we missing a strategy and analysis on displacement, really, when we're facing a housing crisis?
So this particular set of performance measures are looking at the transportation system and things that we can forecast. And displacement is a very difficult measure to do, and there really are no MPOs that I'm aware of. I know that MTC has been working very hard are just now trying to just now able to do some work in that area, but because you can't forecast where the housing will be in the future, it's very difficult to be able to do that as a forecasting measure. So I don't know if that helps answer the question. I understand the issue, and we definitely need to come up with ways to analyze it, but there's only so much that data can do. There are certain types of indicators that you can look at in today, but you have to look at like what MTC, for example, has done is they've started collecting information and then looking at it historically and then bringing it forward as opposed to trying to forecast in the future, if that makes sense.
If I could just add one additional thing, Jane, you know, we certainly hear that that's something, and we heard it this morning, actually during our onboarding sessions for the board members today, that that's something that they'd like to see. I think it's a good note for us to put down as we're looking at the equity framework and how we start to look at how we're really examining our projects and data that we have as needs in order to improve all of the way that we do our analysis right now. And so I think it's something that we could look into putting that as to part of the process to how we want to examine future analysis. The other thing that we are actively doing is pursuing, and our staff is actually still working on putting together a grant application for a displacement study, a Caltrans planning grant. And so we're going to be putting that forward and trying to get some funding so that we can actually do a more detailed study. And we'll certainly keep you guys apprised of how that moves forward.
Thank you. I'm actually going to call on one more person, Mr. Pollard. Gato, I apologize, but I just realized that we ran up to our allotted time, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time and get to item number 8. But Mr. Pollard, please.
I was going to suggest that we just keep it moving. This is a incredibly important portion of this plan. And it's going to take us a while just to comprehend it. You have a lot of technical information that you're trying to share. And from my perspective, let's bring it back. Let's break it up into small pieces, because I'm just blown away at all the work and all the coding and the inputting that had to be made with all the factors to come into that model. I mean, I'd like to spend a few seconds later on and talk about what does that model look like and what factors are going in it, right? And so I'm blown away by the data and that you guys came up with some pretty impressive projections, but let's table this, come back to it next time. And because there's going to be, I got a ton of questions, but yeah, let's just, I'm impressed like hell, you guys. This is just, my mouth is wide open listening to this data. So let's, in a very positive way, let's cut this up a little bit later on.
Sounds good. You have my word that we'll bring it back. So with that, we are going to move on to item number 8. This is an update on the next generation transit fare system and possible fare change. This was requested from Randy last month, and Brian Lane is here to present on this item. And just to reiterate, I do apologize, you guys, for I didn't keep track of time, so that was my fault. But just so you guys know, I do have a hard stop at 3. So just to put that into perspective, okay? Now, Mr. Lane, if you don't mind taking it away.
Hi, everybody. So yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll skip a few slides on this to keep things moving. I'm presenting the same item tomorrow at the Transportation Committee. It's just information as well. So if you still have questions or kind of, if I skip some things you want to know more about and we don't have time to talk about it today, watch tomorrow or just reach out to me and I'll provide my contact information and can talk to anybody personally. Go ahead to the next slide. So quickly, I'll just talk about what Pronto is, and then I'll talk about what the fare scenario changes are, and then what the next steps are in the timeline for this over the next few months. So MTS and NCTD are moving forward with the Pronto fare system to remove or get rid of the Compass card system. There's a bunch of reasons for that, and I'll skip over that and the details of all that, but they started a few years ago to procure a new system, and they're getting ready to launch that shortly. Go ahead. So how does Pronto work? It's very similar to the Compass card. It could be a card or on an app. Cash is always still able to be used. Riders will be able to add money to their account. They'll be able to earn passes rather than pay them up front, and that's called best fare or fare capping, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But that's one of the biggest benefits that's coming out of this system, as well as the retail locations, which I'll also talk about. But that best possible fare is the idea that you'll load money onto your account just a little bit each day or each week as you want or can afford, and the system charges you for each of your rides and is smart enough to know that it'll cap you at a day price and then potentially at a monthly price if you keep riding throughout the month. So these do have effects on the fare revenues that the agencies collect, and is some of the reasons why we looked at various scenarios on different fare changes later. And again, a lot of great things with Pronto, but I'll skip forward on this. Go ahead. Yeah, and the other big benefit will be the increased retail network for the card purchases and reloads. Today, there's about 60 locations throughout the region. With the launch of Pronto, they expect to have about 100, growing up to 400 or more retail locations in about a year. Places like 7-Elevens, Rite Aid, CVS's, most grocery stores would have this. It's basically like a gift card, and you'll be able to buy and reload your card at most of all of those places, and still always the ticket machines at all the rail stations. Skip to the next slide and I'll talk about Pronto. There was just a slide here about why they picked purple. It's a combination of MTS red and NCTD blue, and I know Jane loves it. I think she's given a woot woot there, but I think people do like this color. And the word Pronto, you know, kind of has a symbolic meaning in San Diego with the Hispanic nature of it as well. So go ahead. So some of the fare scenarios, and again, right now we're still just in the information collection period. No votes have been taken yet. I'll talk about the timeline on when votes will be taken in a couple slides. But as we were working through this, you know, the planners and the fare systems administrator folks at MTS and NTTD were trying to figure out ways that they could neutralize fare revenues and potentially by, you know, doing some increases. So scenario one does increase the adult one-way fare from $2.50 to $2.75. It would reduce the youth one-way from $2.50 to $1.25. And then if you increase the adult one-way, you would also increase the MTS access and NCTD lift fare from $5 to $5.50. Scenario two would do all those as well as increase the adult monthly pass price to $75 and the SDM and youth pass price to $24 from $23. You know, throughout all this work, and this work started over a year ago before COVID, we started realizing that, you know, we're in the middle of a pandemic, ridership's down, people's have less employment, and, you know, wages are down. Any increase just kind of doesn't make sense. So, you know, we felt it was our due diligence, though, to present scenarios to MTS and NCTD's boards that could show them ways to offset the fare revenue losses they would have with that best fare capping scenarios. That's going to be a big benefit to a lot of riders. So we did present those scenarios. But scenario three is the one I think, you know, that's probably obviously most popular to most folks. It's popular to Hassan at Sandag and some of our board members, would be just reducing the youth one-way fare from $2.50 to $1.25, having no other changes, and moving forward with the best fare capping. And so again, skipping to the next slide, I have examples of best fares and how it works specifically, but I'll skip forward on these two and just talk about, you know, we've done some outreach already. We had 3 virtual sessions. They were heavily attended and great. Got a lot of great feedback. Folks were understanding the best fare and how it works. I skipped forward through a lot of that, so maybe you guys don't understand it, but I'd be happy to answer questions on that if you still have it. Best fare is perceived as positive. People really like it. They understood that there would be a funding gap, but also that during COVID, you know, fare revenues are so down and ridership is so down that it's hard to understand those numbers right now anyways. And then they also, you know, a lot of the big feedback we got was they don't want that funding gap filled by increasing any of the fares. So next slide. We do have some input feedback methods, and this is, we'll be accepting feedback through March 1st. So still a lot of time before either boards or the Transportation Committee starts taking votes on this. We're still in the information collecting period. But there's a phone number, email addresses, a web forum page where people can type in their comments. And then also at all our meetings, you know, we collected comments. Next slide. So like I said, we're just right now in the information, public outreach time. MTS's board is going to hear this again, just as information next week. They wanted to hear more about Circulate San Diego's letter that they received asking for a free transfer type of affair. So we've been looking into that to see what it might cost to implement something like that and how you would implement it. So they're just going back to their board next week for more information on that. Still no vote. NCDD will hear it on February 18th. And then we're hoping by through those two board meetings, we'll have a lot more information on where they want to go with a full recommendation on which fairs to move forward with. So at their March meetings on March 11th and March 18th, they would then take the votes to move forward to Sandag's Transportation Committee on actually approving any of the fare changes. So that would, Sandag's TC would hear it in April, do the second reading and approval April 16th, and then they could start piloting the Pronto and the fare changes in May and moving forward from there. So that was a quick and dirty. I think that's it from the presentation. Go to the next slide. I think it's just the question slide. So whew, happy to take questions. And if there's anything you want to go back on this PowerPoint, we can do that.
Wow, Brian, thank you. That was the quickest presentation, most concise presentation. Now to all the committee members, if you could please raise your hand or turn on your camera at this moment so that I know you would like to speak. I do not see anybody's hand raised. Oh, there we go. Caro, go ahead and take it away.
I think there's more people that want to speak on this item. I do want to elevate that during the MTS meeting, Environmental Health Coalition spoke against the fare increase, especially right now, because our members are going to be dramatically impacted. It's not something that makes sense, especially during a pandemic when we're seeing a lot of our communities lose their jobs. Suggesting any minimal increase is almost counterproductive. Not only to the fact that our communities won't be able to afford it, but because we're in a transition period where we want to see more people riding transit. Increasing fares is going to continue to discourage that from happening, more so because we're trying to navigate and safety and find safety. So people are going to find more reasons to not use transit. So it's already unsafe to ride transit, and now you're increasing the fares, then I won't ride it. It's just that you're creating more excuses to reduce people wanting to ride transit. So we would like to request that the fares are not increased. So scenario 3, and in the case that they have to be increased because we know they're expenses, we're also recommending that that would be reevaluated in a couple of years when we're out of the pandemic. So a phased approach in the increase when it's a little bit more reasonable to consider an increase. Thank you.
Yep, and that is the kind of the plan right now, and both agencies are considering that is only do the fare decrease, start the best fare capabilities, see how post-COVID numbers and revenues look, to then think of, if anything needs to be filled. And then Sandag in the meantime, and you'll see this as we roll out some of the policies with the regional plan, with the vision, is to cut fares as much as possible to really encourage ridership, because that's something we all realize is that the lower the fare, the more people you will get on board, but that does take new revenue sources from somewhere. So that's part of our work with the regional plan, is identifying where we could find some funds to pay for lower fares in the long run. And that's our plan at Sandag, and MTS and entities on board as well. But again, it takes money. And so it's, for them, they don't have more money. They can't do the things that we all want.
Thank you. If we can go back to the slide where the future dates for this conversation, where they're going to continue to happen, just so we can have it on the screen. First, we're going to go to Mr. And thank you, Caro, for your statement. We're going to move on to Mr. Pollard, followed by Randy.
Yes, I was just going to chime in regarding the support of scenario 3 as well. Is there any action that we need to take on today's items? Is this information only, or what, I guess would be my question.
Yeah, we're just bringing this for information. Even MTS's board meetings next week in February 18th and the Sandag Transportation Committee tomorrow is just purely information, hearing from the public, getting more feedback, so to then go to their boards in March to actually take a vote.
I'd like to interject here and just let you guys know. You guys know I'm a conduit for you guys, so it's up to this committee. If you want to make a motion or a second, you have every right to do so. But at this point, it is only an informational item.
Okay. Because I think everybody at this table is going to, and I don't need, I'm presupposing, be in favor of scenario 3. And I'd like to get our input as the equity arm of Sandag to outline our support with that scenario before the board votes on it, if at all possible, somewhere along this process. And Brian, heck of a job, man. That was a quick and dirty explanation, but it was right on point. Thank you for that.
Wonderful. Go ahead, Randy.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Really, City Heights CDC is really excited for the Pronto rollout. I think having a new streamlined service is going to be supported by our residents. The Compass card has been around for a while. It's time for the new one. And I know this is going to roll out with the new Blue Line extension to UC San Diego. So that's going to be excellent, create a lot of pipelines for our communities to ride the Blue Line. I think that we are concerned about the fare increase. The fare was just increased 2 years ago. Before that, it was increased 10 years ago. So to increase it again now, and we know data shows that a lot of our low-income communities, many of them are south of the 8, are not only being hit hardest by COVID, but also the economic impacts of COVID. And so to increase the fares now, I think is the wrong move. I am concerned that that's on the table. I understand that it needs to be, but I'm glad that there's a scenario 3 on the table. And I have a question for you. I still have another comment. I might make a motion as well, but do we know when the social equity analysis will be released for these scenarios?
So we're waiting for more guidance from both boards on which scenario they would like. We can do the analysis on all of them, but we're hoping that we can hear that they have a specific one in mind, then we would just do the one analysis on that one. But again, always with, the way Title VI works for fare changes, it doesn't actually the FTA doesn't actually ask you to look at how a percent fare increase affects the amount of money that it costs a certain rider. It's just asking you to look at, does a fare increase disproportionately affect minorities or low income over non-minorities? So are more minorities or low income getting the same fare increase as non? And because we know that most riders are actually minority and low income in our system, there are no fares that are more proportionally used by minorities or low income. So unfortunately, that's not the way it looks at. Now, Council Member Montgomery was asking, and she made this comment at the TC a couple of years ago when we did this fare change, that she understands that's what the FTA wants, but it doesn't quite seem like the way to look at it. So we met with her in her office last week to kind of talk about what she's thinking on that and what would be the best way to move forward. So we'll in the staff items that we take in March to the board, MTS entities boards, we'll include a little more than just what FTA asked for on that. So that's our plan, is to start rolling that out at that time.
Well, thanks. Yeah, then with my last comment, then I appreciate that, Brian. Good to know. And thanks for meeting with the council member, Monica Montgomery staff. But, it's something that we've heard time and time from our residents in Mid-City is that they want a reduction in fares. And so, I'd like to make a motion that the working group support the Pronto with the fare capping, and to support scenario 3 of the fare adjustment scenario, which is to reduce one-way youth fares from $2.50 to $1.25. And the reason I'm making that motion today is just because it is going back to the board for the second time in 1 week. And I think it's important for us to have an impression, a public impression on this action. So that's my motion.
Randy, I apologize, but I stand corrected. This was an informational item. Therefore, the public does not know that we are we're not taking any, the community doesn't know that we're taking action on it. So therefore, so I apologize, Brian, you were correct. You can make a motion for asking for an item to come back to this committee for an action, but nothing can formally be adopted today because the item wasn't noticed. So I apologize for that. I misspoke.
Oh, it's okay. Can I change my motion? I'd like to pull that motion and add a new one to bring this item back to our next meeting, the next social equity working group meeting.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor.
This is Carol, and I will second that motion.
Carol, you're seconding, okay. And with that, we're going to move on to Mr. Pollard, followed by Erica.
And to bring it as action. Sorry, I don't know if I said the word action, but that's what I meant.
Yes, I got that.
And I'm going to lower my hand. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you.
And then if I could we just go back a couple slides, please, Tracy, to the Fair Study outreach. I think on this slide, I do have that last bullet that talks about participants. I think here is probably a good spot where during our presentations, we could mention that, I brought this to the Social Services Transportation Advisory Council a couple weeks ago, and their general consensus was to move forward with scenario 3. I think what I'm hearing today is the general consensus from the CBO working group is to move forward with scenario 3. So I think, mentioning that or adding a bullet on this slide may go a long ways as well before you guys can take a vote.
Thank you for that. So we have a motion and a second, and we have Erica on the lights.
Real quick, so I'll support Randy's motion, but I'll put it on the public record just for my crazy ideas. I've talked offline to a couple people in the past that I think with transit that Sandag should consider a bold experiment of doing free transit for more than a day, doing it for a pilot test of maybe a quarter or at least a month, and really doing something dramatic and different. And if we're changing from Compass to Pronto, maybe that's a good opportunity. I have no idea of the fiscal impacts or feasibility of that, but I think it would be worth exploring something very bold as we're asking the public to support a bold new vision. So that's my.
Okay, thank you, Erica. I don't see anybody else's hands up. I don't see anybody in the public with their hands up. So we do have a motion. I'm going to reiterate the motion, asking for an item to come back to the committee for action on next generation transit fare system and possible fare change. Did I get that right, Randy?
Yes, Chair.
Wonderful. So we have a motion by Randy, second by Carol. Was it Carol or was it Caro? It was Carol, right?
It's Carol.
Carol, wonderful, thank you. Okay, so clerk, if you can please call the question, or I call the question, if you could take the roll.
Alliance for Regional Solutions.
Yes.
Bayside Community Clinic, Rose Ceballos.
Yes.
Casa Familiar, Goyo Ortiz.
Yes.
City Heights, Randy Torres.
Yes.
Chula Vista Community Collaborative, Brendelaide Rodriguez.
Yes, I agree.
El Cajon Collaborative, Carol Lewis.
Carol Lewis, yes.
National Latino Research Center, Lillian Serrano.
Yes.
Nile Sisters Development Initiative, Elizabeth Liu.
Mohammed Tuama is representing them now.
Okay.
Yes, this is Mohammed Tuama.
Olivewood Gardens, Claire Groberner,
Yes.
Samham Health Centers, Faye Sigmund,
Yes.
Urban Collaborative Project, Brian Berry Pollard,
Yes.
Erica Leary, Vista Community Clinic,
Yes, I approve.
and the motion passes with those present.
Wonderful. Thank you, clerk. And so once again, I apologize for not keeping track of time. But I want to make sure that we have a robust conversation on all our topics. We are, did I have to say motion passes? If not, you guys got it. The topics for next meeting are obviously, we're going to bring back this item. We're going to bring back an action item on the next generation transit fare system and possible fare change. Just so you guys know, we're having we do have a scheduled meeting March 4th. So that is before the March 11th meeting that MTS will be having. So we're going to have to bring back item number 7, social equity analysis for the regional plan. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm so sorry, you guys. We are going to bring back item 7. And I do apologize for people who were ready to present. That's holistic implementation of adaptation strategies. I'm not sure if we need to hear the social equity analysis for the regional plan next meeting, but it will be in the future meeting. And just to add, we did have Ms. Reynoso make a comment about potentially having an informational item regarding Sandag's business with minority businesses, which I thought was something that we could take a look at. So those are potential topics for next meeting. You guys know where to find me, Vivian Moreno at sandiego.gov, if you guys want to add anything to the next meeting. Do we have any comments from the public or any comments from our committee members?
I would just like to say, this is Jane, that to highly recommend participating and listening to the February 12th meeting of the board. And I'll send out the information about the time and the link.
Wonderful, thank you. And once again, thank you everybody for such a wonderful, robust meeting, and thank you to all our presenters. The next working group meeting is scheduled for Thursday, March 4th, 2021 at 10:30. So thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Once again, going once, going twice. Meeting is officially adjourned. Thank you, everybody.